Every evening at exactly 6 o'clock, Mira Reyes pushed her cleaning cart through the back entrance of the Hartwell Academy of Music. The wheels squeaked against the polished marble floors, a sound that had become as familiar to her as her own heartbeat. For 7 years, this had been her routine. Clock in, grab the cart, start mopping, become invisible. And that last part was the easiest of all. Students rushed past her like she was part of the furniture. Professors nodded without really seeing her. Parents visiting for recitals looked right through her as if she were made of glass. Mira had learned to accept this a long time ago. In her faded blue uniform with her hair pulled back in a tight bun, she was nobody. Just the cleaning lady, just another pair of hands scrubbing toilets and emptying trash cans. But here is the thing about invisible people. They carry secrets that nobody thinks to ask about. Mira was 42 years old. She had deep brown eyes that held stories she never told anyone. Her hands were rough from years of cleaning solutions and hard work. But if you looked closely at her fingers, you would notice something unusual. They were long and elegant, the kind of fingers that seemed made for something more delicate than pushing a mop. She had come to Boston from the Philippines when she was 17. That was 25 years ago now, and sometimes it felt like another lifetime entirely. Sometimes it felt like yesterday. Tonight, as she mopped the grand recital hall, Mira let her eyes wander to the stage. There it sat, gleaming under the soft lights that were always left on. A Steinway grand piano, black and beautiful, worth more money than Mira would earn in 10 years of cleaning. Students treated it like it was sacred. And maybe it was. Mira stopped mopping. She stood there in the empty hall, surrounded by 200 velvet seats, and she stared at that piano like it was an old friend she had abandoned. Because in a way, it was. Back in Manila, in a small house with a leaky roof and walls that shook during typhoons, there had been a piano. It was nothing like this magnificent Steinway. It was an old upright, bought second-hand from a church that was closing down. The wood was scratched, some of the keys stuck. One of the pedals barely worked. But to young Mira, it was the most beautiful thing in the world. Her mother, Corazon, had saved for 3 years to buy it. 3 years of sewing dresses until her fingers bled. 3 years of taking extra work, staying up until midnight, skipping meals so her daughter could have this one thing. Music is a gift from God, her mother used to say. And you, Anak, you have this gift inside you. I see it. I hear it. The whole world will hear it someday. Mira started lessons when she was 5. By the time she was 8, her teacher said she had never seen anything like it. The girl played like she had been born with music already living in her bones. By 10, Mira was performing at local competitions. By 12, she was winning them. People came from other provinces just to watch this skinny little girl sit at a piano and make it sing. Those were the golden years. Mira remembered them now, as she stood in the empty recital hall. She remembered the way her mother's face would light up during performances. She remembered the proud tears that would stream down Corazon's cheeks. She remembered thinking that nothing could ever break this beautiful dream they were building together. She was wrong. When Mira was 14, her father left. He packed a bag one morning and walked out the door and never came back. No explanation. No goodbye. Just gone. Like smoke in the wind, he left behind a mountain of debt that Corazon had known nothing about. Loan sharks started showing up at their door. The little money they had disappeared overnight. But still, Corazon refused to sell the piano. Not this, she told Mira, holding her daughter's face in her worn hands. Never this. This is your future. This is your way out. Mira worked harder. She practiced every spare moment, determined to make her mother's sacrifice worth something. And then, the miracle came. A letter from the Manila Conservatory of Music. A full scholarship. Everything paid for. Mira's talent had opened a door that should have been impossible for a girl from her background. Corazon cried for an hour when they read that letter together. But life has a cruel sense of timing. 2 weeks before Mira was supposed to start at the conservatory, her mother collapsed in the kitchen. The doctors found cancer. Advanced. Aggressive. They gave her maybe 6 months, probably less. Mira did not think twice. She tore up the scholarship letter herself. "What are you doing?" Her mother had whispered from the hospital bed, too weak to even raise her voice. "Mira, no. You cannot do this. I am staying with you, Mama," Mira had said, and her voice did not shake, even though her heart was breaking. "I am not leaving you. Not now. Not ever. But your dream. You are my dream, Mama. You always were." Corazon died 4 months later. On a quiet Tuesday morning, she passed away holding Mira's hand while rain tapped against the window. Her last words were barely a whisper, but Mira heard them clearly. "Play for me, Anak. One day. Play for me." Mira had nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I will. Mama. I promise." But she never did. After the funeral, after the debts were settled and the little house was sold, Mira found that she could not bring herself to touch a piano. Every time she tried, she saw her mother's face, she heard her mother's voice. The grief was too heavy, too sharp. Music had been something they shared, and now that her mother was gone, it felt like the music had died too. An aunt in America offered to sponsor her immigration papers. Mira accepted. She arrived in Boston with $200 in her pocket and a heart full of wounds that would not heal. She found work cleaning offices, then hotels, then finally the academy. 25 years passed. 25 years of mopping floors and scrubbing sinks and watching other people live the dream that should have been hers. 25 years of walking past pianos without playing a single note. 25 years of breaking her promise to her mother every single day. Now Mira stood in the recital hall, her mop forgotten in her hands. The Steinway gleamed on the stage like it was waiting for something. Like it was waiting for her. She felt an ache in her chest, the same ache she felt every night when she cleaned this room. Her fingers tingled with a longing she had tried to bury for more than 2 decades. "I am sorry, Mama," she whispered to the empty hall. "I am so sorry." Then she picked up her mop and got back to work. Because that is what invisible people do. They work. They survive. They carry their broken dreams in silence. But somewhere deep inside Mira, something was beginning to stir. A small flame that had never quite gone out. No matter how hard she had tried to smother it, she did not know it yet. But everything was about to change. The piano was waiting. And soon, very soon, it would not have to wait anymore. The Hartwell Spring Gala was the biggest night of the year at the Academy. Wealthy families flew in from across the country. Music critics came with their notebooks ready. Alumni who had gone on to play in famous concert halls returned to walk the halls where they had once been students. It was a night of silk dresses and expensive suits, champagne glasses, and polite laughter. For the students, it was a chance to shine. For the donors, it was a chance to feel important. For Mira, it was just more work. She had been assigned extra hours that evening. More floors to mop. More bathrooms to clean. More trash cans to empty. The pay was slightly better for event nights, and Mira needed every dollar she could get. Her apartment had a leak in the ceiling that the landlord kept promising to fix but never did. So she said yes to the extra shift without hesitation. By 7 in the evening, the grand recital hall was filling up with guests. Mira stayed in the background, arranging chairs in the overflow section, making sure everything looked perfect. She moved quietly, keeping her head down, trying to take up as little space as possible. That was the trick to being invisible. Make yourself small. Move without sound. Never make eye contact. But sometimes, no matter how careful you are, accidents happen. Mira was adjusting a row of chairs near the side entrance when her elbow caught a music stand. It wobbled, then crashed to the marble floor with a sound that echoed through the hall like a gunshot. Sheets of music scattered everywhere. The room went quiet for a moment. Heads turned. Mira felt her face burn with embarrassment as she dropped to her knees and started gathering the papers. "Oh my God," a voice said from above her. "Are you serious right now?" Mira looked up. A young man stood there, maybe 20 years old, dressed in a tailored black suit that probably cost more than 3 months of her salary. His hair was perfectly styled. His watch glittered with diamonds. Everything about him screamed money and privilege. Behind him stood a small group of students, all equally polished, all looking at Mira like she was something unpleasant they had stepped in. "I am so sorry," Mira said quickly, still picking up the music sheets. "I did not mean to. It was an accident." The young man laughed, but there was no warmth in it. "An accident? Right. Do you have any idea how much these instruments cost? That music stand alone is worth more than you make in a month." His friends snickered. One of them, a girl with blonde hair and pearls around her neck, pulled out her phone and started recording. "Look at this," the young man continued, gesturing at Mira like she was a circus act. "The cleaning lady thinks she can just knock things over and say sorry. Maybe someone should teach her how to walk properly." Mira's hands trembled as she gathered the last of the papers. She wanted to say something. She wanted to tell him that she was a human being, not a piece of furniture. She wanted to tell him that she had more talent in her little finger than he would ever have in his entire body. But she did not say any of those things. She had learned a long time ago that people like him did not listen to people like her. She was invisible, remember? And invisible people do not get to speak. "Here," she said quietly, holding out the music sheets. The young man snatched them from her hand without a word of thanks. Then he looked at his friends and smiled. "Hey," he said, "maybe she wants to play for us. What do you think? Should we let the cleaning lady try the piano?" The blonde girl laughed loudly. "Oh my God. Yes. That would be hilarious. Come on, lady. Show us what you have got." Another boy joined in. "Yeah, give us a performance. We could use some entertainment before the real music starts." They were all laughing now. Some of them were recording on their phones. Mira stood there, frozen, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. She knew they were mocking her. She knew they expected her to stand there looking foolish while they laughed at her expense. She knew that, to them, she was nothing more than a joke, and maybe that was the worst part, because somewhere deep inside her, beneath all the years of silence and sorrow, Mira knew the truth. She could play. She could play better than any of them would ever dream of playing, but she could not make herself move. She could not make herself speak. The words stuck in her throat like stones. "What is the matter?" the young man said, pretending to look concerned. "Stage fright? Do not worry. We will not judge you too harshly." More laughter, more phones pointed at her face. Mira felt tears prick at her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "Not here. Not in front of these people. I need to get back to work," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She turned and walked away as fast as she could without running. Behind her, she could still hear them laughing. The sound followed her down the hallway, into the bathroom, where she locked herself in a stall and finally let the tears come. She cried quietly, one hand pressed over her mouth so no one would hear. She cried for the humiliation. She cried for the unfairness of it all. She cried for the girl she used to be, the one who had dreams and talent and a future. And she cried for her mother, who had sacrificed everything so that her daughter could have a gift that now sat unused, gathering dust like an old photograph. When Mira finally left the bathroom, her eyes were red but her face was composed. She finished her shift without looking at anyone. She mopped floors. She emptied trash. She became invisible again. But that night, when she got home to her tiny apartment with the leaky ceiling and the second-hand furniture, something happened. Mira was changing out of her uniform when she noticed a small box on her dresser. It had been there for years, untouched. She did not even remember the last time she had opened it. Tonight, for reasons she could not explain, she opened it. Inside were a few old photographs. Her mother at her sewing machine, their little house in Manila, the old upright piano with the scratched wood and sticky keys, and there, at the bottom of the box, was a photograph that made Mira's breath catch in her throat. It was her mother, sitting at that piano, smiling at the camera. She looked young and beautiful and full of hope. On the back of the photograph, written in her mother's neat handwriting, were words that Mira had read 100 times before but had never truly heard until now. "Music lives in your soul, Anik. No one can ever take that away. Not time. not distance, not even death. When you play, I am with you. Always. Mira sat on the edge of her bed, holding the photograph, and let those words sink into her heart. For 25 years, she had told herself that the music was gone, that it had died with her mother, that there was no point in playing anymore because the only person who had ever truly believed in her was no longer there to listen. But maybe she had been wrong. Maybe the music had never left. Maybe it had just been waiting, patient and quiet, for her to find the courage to let it out again. Those students at the gala had laughed at her. They had called her nothing. They had tried to make her feel small and worthless and invisible, but they did not know who she really was. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to show them. Mira looked at her mother's photograph one more time. She touched the image gently, as if she could feel the warmth of her mother's hand through the faded paper. "I hear you, Mama," she whispered. "I finally hear you." That night, Mira did not sleep. She lay awake in the darkness, listening to the sound of rain on her window, feeling something she had not felt in 25 years. Hope. The first night was the hardest. Mira waited until everyone had gone home. The students, the professors, the administrators who always left at exactly 5 o'clock. She finished her cleaning shift at 9. Just like always. But instead of clocking out and walking to the bus stop, she did something different. She hid. There was a storage closet near the back of the building where they kept extra mops and cleaning supplies. Mira slipped inside and waited in the darkness, her heart beating so fast she thought it might burst right out of her chest. She waited for an hour, maybe longer, until the building fell completely silent. Then she crept out. The hallways were dark, except for the emergency lights that glowed soft and green along the floor. Mira's footsteps echoed as she walked, and every sound made her jump. She felt like a thief. In a way, maybe she was. She was stealing something that did not belong to her. Time, space, a chance to remember who she used to be. The door to the grand recital hall was unlocked. It always was. Mira pushed it open slowly, and the hinges groaned like they were announcing her arrival. The hall stretched out before her, 200 empty seats facing the stage. And there, in the center of it all, sat the Steinway. Moonlight poured through the tall windows and spilled across its black surface like silver paint. Mira walked toward it slowly. Her legs felt weak. Her hands were shaking. She climbed the 3 steps to the stage and stood in front of the piano, just staring at it. 25 years. That is how long it had been since she had played. 25 years of silence. 25 years of running away from the thing she loved most in this world. She sat down on the bench. The leather was cool beneath her. She placed her fingers on the keys, and for a moment, she could not breathe. Then she pressed down. The note rang out through the empty hall, clear and pure and heartbreaking. Mira closed her eyes and let the sound wash over her. It was like hearing an old friend's voice after decades apart. It was like coming home. She tried to play a scale. Her fingers stumbled. They felt clumsy and stiff, like they had forgotten how to move. She tried again. More mistakes. More wrong notes. Frustration bubbled up inside her, and she had to fight the urge to slam the lid shut and walk away. But then she heard her mother's voice in her head, soft and patient, the way it had always been during their lessons. "Slowly, Anik. Do not rush. The music is not going anywhere. Let your fingers remember." So Mira slowed down. She played 1 note at a time. Then 2. Then 3. She let her fingers find their way. Hesitant at first, then gradually more confident. By the end of that first night, she could play a simple melody. It was not much. A child could have done better. But to Mira, it felt like a miracle. She came back the next night. And the night after that. And the night after that. Every evening, she would finish her cleaning shift, hide in the storage closet, and wait for the building to empty. Then she would slip into the recital hall and sit at the Steinway until the early hours of the morning. Her fingers began to remember. Slowly at first, then faster. Muscle memory is a strange thing. The body holds on to what the mind tries to forget. All those years of practice as a child. All those hours at the old upright piano in Manila, they had left marks deep inside her that time could not erase. After 2 weeks, Mira could play simple pieces again. After a month, she was tackling more difficult works. Her fingers flew across the keys with growing confidence. The music poured out of her like water from a broken dam, unstoppable and wild and free. She played everything she could remember. Folk songs her mother used to sing, classical pieces she had learned for competitions. And always, she would end with the same piece, Chopin's Ballade. No, 1-inch G minor. It had been her mother's favorite. Corazon used to hum it while she worked at her sewing machine, her foot tapping gently on the pedal, her voice soft and sweet. She said it reminded her of a story about loss and love and finding beauty in the midst of sorrow. When you play this piece, her mother had told her once, I can see the whole world in your hands. Promise me you will never stop playing it, Anik. Promise me. Mira had promised. And then she had broken that promise for 25 years. Now, alone in the dark recital hall, she was trying to keep it at last. The ballade was difficult. It demanded everything from the performer: technical skill, emotional depth, the ability to tell a story without words. Mira's fingers struggled with passages that had once been effortless. She made mistakes. She got frustrated. Some nights she wanted to give up entirely, but she kept going. For her mother, for herself, for the girl she used to be and the woman she still hoped to become. One night, about 6 weeks into her secret practice, something happened. Mira was deep into the ballade, her eyes closed, her whole body swaying with the music. She had reached the part where the melody swells and builds, climbing higher and higher towards something that feels like both joy and heartbreak at the same time. She played it perfectly, every note, every phrase, every emotion. When she finished, she sat there in the silence, breathing hard, her heart full of something she could not name. And then she heard it, clapping. Mira's eyes flew open. She spun around on the bench, her pulse spiking with fear. A man stood at the back of the hall. He was older, maybe in his 60s, with gray hair and a security guard uniform. He had a kind face and gentle eyes that glittered with tears in the dim light. Mira recognized him. His name was Harold. He had worked at the academy for years. They had never spoken more than a few words to each other. Just polite nods in the hallway. The silent acknowledgement of two people who occupied the same invisible space. Please, Mira said, her voice shaking. Please do not report me. I know I am not supposed to be here. I will leave. I will never come back. Just please do not tell anyone. Harold walked slowly down the aisle between the seats. He stopped at the edge of the stage and looked up at her with an expression she did not expect. Wonder. Lady, he said softly, I have worked in this building for 15 years. I have heard hundreds of students play on that stage. Famous ones. Award-winning ones. Kids who went on to perform in concert halls all over the world. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice cracked with emotion. I have never heard anything like what I just heard. Not once. Not ever. Mira did not know what to say. She sat there, frozen, waiting for the other shoe to drop. But Harold just smiled. A warm, fatherly smile that reminded her so much of home it made her chest ache. Your secret is safe with me, he said. You come here and play as much as you want. I will make sure no one bothers you. From that night on, Harold became her guardian. He would sit in the back row while she practiced, never saying a word, just listening. Sometimes she would catch him wiping his eyes. Sometimes he would give her a small thumbs up when she finished a difficult passage. He never asked about her past. He never asked why she was doing this. He just accepted her, exactly as she was. And that simple kindness meant more to Mira than she could ever express. 3 months passed. Mira's playing had transformed. The clumsy fingers of that first night were gone, replaced by hands that moved with precision and passion. The ballade was no longer a struggle. It was a conversation, a prayer, a love letter to a mother who was gone but somehow still present in every note. Then one afternoon, while cleaning the main hallway, Mira saw something that made her stop in her tracks. A flyer on the bulletin board. Big letters at the top announced the Hartwell Open competition. Anyone could enter. Any age. Any background. First prize was a paid concert tour. And $50,000. But it was the words at the bottom that caught her attention. Open to all, because true talent knows no boundaries. Mira stood there for a long time, staring at that flyer. Her hands were trembling again, but this time it was not from fear. It was from possibility. The deadline to enter was in 2 days. She thought about her mother. She thought about the students who had laughed at her. She thought about 25 years of silence and invisibility and broken promises. And then, before she could talk herself out of it, Mira pulled out her phone and took a picture of the flyer. It was time. The night of the competition, Mira almost did not go. She stood in her tiny apartment, staring at herself in the cracked bathroom mirror, and every voice in her head told her she was crazy. What was she thinking? She was a cleaning lady. A nobody. She had not performed in front of an audience in 25 years. She was going to walk out on that stage and make a fool of herself in front of hundreds of people, the same people who looked through her every day. The same students who had laughed at her and recorded her humiliation on their phones. Her hands would not stop shaking. Her stomach churned with nausea. She had already changed her outfit 3 times, and nothing felt right. Finally, she settled on a simple black dress she had found at a thrift store the week before. It cost her $12. The fabric was slightly faded, and there was a tiny tear near the hem that she had sewn up herself. But when she looked in the mirror, she thought maybe, just maybe, she looked like someone who belonged on a stage, or maybe she was fooling herself. There was a knock at her door. Mira opened it to find Harold standing in the hallway, wearing a clean button-down shirt instead of his usual uniform. He smiled at her, that warm, fatherly smile that always made her feel a little less alone. "You ready?" he asked. "No," Mira admitted. "I am terrified." Harold nodded like he understood completely. "Good," he said. "That means you care. Now let us go before you talk yourself out of it." He had borrowed his nephew's car to drive her to the academy. The whole way there, Mira sat in the passenger seat with her hands clasped tightly in her lap, trying to remember how to breathe. When they arrived, the parking lot was already full. Fancy cars lined up in rows. People in elegant clothes streamed toward the entrance. Mira watched them through the window and felt her courage shrinking with every passing second. "I cannot do this," she whispered. Harold turned off the engine and looked at her. "Yes, you can," he said firmly. "I have heard you play, Mira. I have heard you play 100 times in that empty hall, and every single time, you made me believe in something I had forgotten existed. Beauty. Hope. Magic." He paused. "You have a gift. Tonight, you share it with the world. That is all." Mira looked at him. This kind man who had kept her secret and guarded her dreams without asking for anything in return. "Thank you," she said softly. "For everything." Harold smiled. "Thank me after you win." She registered under her maiden name, Mira Reyes. No one at the academy knew that name. To them, she was just another face in the crowd of competitors. Invisible, as always. But this time, she did not mind. The recital hall was packed. Every seat was filled. Mira peeked through the curtain backstage and felt her heart stop. She recognized so many faces in the audience. Professors who had never looked at her twice, students who had passed her in the hallways without a glance. And there, sitting in the 3rd row with his friends, was the young man who had mocked her at the spring gala. He was laughing at something, looking confident and relaxed. Why would he not be? He was one of the favorites to win. His family had donated millions to the academy. He had been groomed for this moment his entire life. Mira looked down at her $12 dress and almost laughed. The contrast was absurd. The competition began. One by one, performers took the stage. They were good. Some of them were very good. They played complicated pieces with technical precision that impressed the crowd. The judges nodded and scribbled notes on their clipboards. Then it was the young man's turn. He walked onto the stage like he owned it. Which in a way, he did. He sat at the Steinway with practiced ease and launched into a Rachmaninoff concerto that was ambitious and flashy and designed to show off. The audience applauded politely when he finished. He stood and bowed with a satisfied smile, clearly pleased with himself. As he walked off stage, he passed right by Mira without recognizing her. Of course, he did not recognize her. She was nobody to him. Just the cleaning lady he had humiliated and forgotten. Next performer, the announcer's voice echoed through the hall. Mira Reyes. This was it. Mira's legs felt like they were made of water. She could not feel her hands. Her vision blurred at the edges. For one terrible moment, she thought she might faint right there backstage. Then she heard her mother's voice, clear as a bell, soft as a whisper. I am with you, Anik. Always. Mira stepped onto the stage. The lights were blinding. She could barely see the audience. Just a sea of shadows and shapes beyond the glare. She walked to the piano slowly, her heels clicking against the wooden floor. She sat down on the bench and placed her hands on the keys. Somewhere in the audience, someone whispered, "Who is she?" Never heard of her. Mira closed her eyes. She thought about her mother. She thought about the little house in Manila with the leaky roof. She thought about the old upright piano with the scratched wood and sticky keys. She thought about sacrifice and love and promises broken and kept. And then she began to play. Chopin's Ballade. No. 1. The first notes floated into the silence like drops of rain falling into still water. Mira let the music take her. Let it carry her away from the stage and the lights and the judging eyes. She was not performing anymore. She was praying. She was remembering. She was speaking to her mother across the distance of death and time. The melody built slowly, gently, telling a story of longing and loss. Mira's fingers moved across the keys with a grace that surprised even her. All those months of secret practice, all those nights alone in the dark recital hall, they had prepared her for this moment. But it was not technique that made the music come alive. It was emotion, raw and real and unfiltered. Every note carried the weight of 25 years of silence. Every phrase spoke of a daughter's love for a mother who had given everything. The audience fell completely still. No one moved. No one whispered. They sat frozen in their seats, caught in the spell of something they had not expected. In the third row, the young man who had mocked her leaned forward. His confident smile was gone. His face had gone pale. He did not recognize the woman on stage, but he recognized what he was hearing. Genius. Pure, undeniable genius. The ballade reached its climax. The music swelled and crashed like waves against a shore, powerful and heartbreaking and beautiful beyond words. Mira played with her whole body, her whole soul, holding nothing back. And then, the final notes. Soft, gentle, like a goodbye. Like a promise finally kept. Silence. For a long, breathless moment. Nothing happened. Mira sat at the piano with her eyes still closed, tears streaming down her face. She did not know if she had done well. She did not know if anyone had felt what she had felt. All she knew was that she had finally played for her mother, just like she had promised all those years ago. Then the silence broke. One person stood up. Then another. Then 10 more. Then the entire hall was on its feet. The applause was deafening, rolling over Mira like thunder. People were shouting. People were crying. Someone yelled "Brava!" and others joined in until the word became a chant. Mira opened her eyes. Through her tears, she saw something she had never expected to see. The same people who had looked through her for 7 years. The same students who had ignored her. The same professors who had never learned her name. They were all standing. They were all clapping. They were all looking at her like she was someone, like she mattered. In the back of the hall, Harold stood with tears running down his weathered cheeks. He caught her eye and nodded, just once. That was all she needed. Mira rose from the bench on trembling legs. She faced the audience and bowed. A small, humble bow that said, "Thank you," more than words ever could. When she straightened up, she looked toward the ceiling, toward something beyond the lights and the rafters and the world itself. "That was for you, Mama," she whispered. "That was always for you." The judges did not take long to decide. When the head judge stood up and walked to the microphone, the hall fell silent again. Everyone leaned forward in their seats. Mira stood backstage with her hands pressed against her chest, feeling her heart pound beneath her fingers. "In all my years of judging competitions," the head judge began, "I have heard many talented performers, technically perfect, musically precise. But tonight, I heard something different. Tonight, I heard someone play not just with their hands, but with their soul." He paused and looked down at the paper in his hand. "The winner of this year's Hartwell Open competition, by unanimous decision, is Mira Reyes." The applause erupted again, even louder than before. Mira felt hands pushing her gently toward the stage. Her legs moved on their own. She walked into the blinding lights, and this time, she was not invisible. The head judge shook her hand warmly. Someone placed a small trophy in her arms. A check was presented. $50,000. More money than Mira had ever seen in her life. But none of that mattered. What mattered was what came next. "We would like to invite our winner to say a few words," the head judge said, stepping aside. Mira looked out at the audience. Hundreds of faces stared back at her. Some were smiling. Some were curious. Some were still wiping tears from their eyes. She spotted Harold in the back row, beaming like a proud father. She spotted the young man from the spring gala, sitting frozen in his seat with an expression she could not quite read. Shock, maybe, or shame. Mira leaned toward the microphone. Her voice was soft at first, but it grew stronger with each word. 25 years ago, she began, I made a promise to my mother. She was dying. Cancer. She knew she did not have much time left, and on her last day, she held my hand and asked me to play for her. Just one more time. The hall was absolutely silent. Not a cough. Not a whisper. Just Mira's voice and the truth she had carried for so long. I could not do it. She continued. I was 17 years old, and the grief was too heavy. I could not touch a piano without seeing her face, so I stopped playing. For 25 years, I did not play a single note. I broke my promise to the person I loved most in this world. She paused, feeling the tears threaten to return. She pushed them back. Many of you in this room have seen me before. You just did not know it. For the past 7 years, I have worked at this academy as a janitor. I have mopped your floors. I have emptied your trash cans. I have cleaned your bathrooms. And every single day, I have walked past you without being seen. A murmur rippled through the crowd. People looked at each other in confusion. Some leaned forward, trying to get a better look at her face. I am not telling you this to make you feel guilty, Mira said quickly. I am telling you this because I want you to understand something important. Something I wish I had understood a long time ago. She took a deep breath. Everyone you meet is carrying something you cannot see. Everyone has a story. Everyone has a gift. The woman who cleans your office might have been a concert pianist. The man who drives your bus might have been a poet. The teenager who serves your coffee might have dreams bigger than you can imagine. In the third row, the young man who had mocked her lowered his eyes. His face had gone red. The friends around him shifted uncomfortably in their seats. A few months ago, Mira continued, some students at this academy laughed at me. They made fun of me for being a cleaning lady. They asked me to play the piano as a joke, expecting me to embarrass myself. They recorded me on their phones so they could share my humiliation with the world. The murmur grew louder. People started looking around, trying to identify who she was talking about. I am not going to name them, Mira said firmly. That is not why I am telling this story. I am telling this story because that night, something woke up inside me. All that pain and shame. It reminded me of who I used to be. It reminded me of my mother and the promise I had broken. And it made me want to play again. She smiled softly, a smile full of sadness and gratitude all at once. So I want to thank them, whoever they are, because without that moment, I would not be standing here tonight. Sometimes the people who try to break us end up being the ones who set us free. The young man in the third row looked like he wanted to disappear into his seat. His friends would not even look at him. But Mira was not finished. My mother was a seamstress, she said. She worked 16 hours a day, sewing dresses for other people, so that her daughter could take piano lessons. She saved for 3 years to buy me an old second-hand piano. She sacrificed everything, her health, her rest, her own dreams, so that I could have mine. Mira's voice cracked, but she kept going. She never got to see me perform on a stage like this. She never got to see me win a competition. She died believing that one day I would share my music with the world. And then I let her down for 25 years. A tear slipped down her cheek. She did not wipe it away. But tonight, Mama, I finally kept my promise. Tonight, I played for you. And I hope, wherever you are, you heard it. I hope you know that everything I am, everything I have ever been, is because of you. The audience was crying. Not just a few people. Everywhere Mira looked, she saw tears. Even the judges were wiping their eyes. Even the students who had never noticed her before. I am going to use this prize money to start a scholarship, Mira announced. I am going to call it the Corazon Reyes Music Fund. Named after my mother, it will help children from poor families, children who cannot afford lessons, children whose parents work multiple jobs just to keep food on the table. Because talent does not care about money, dreams do not care about status, and every child deserves a chance to find the music inside them. The applause that followed was different from before. It was not just appreciation, it was something deeper. Respect, admiration, love. When Mira walked off the stage, people reached out to touch her arm, to shake her hand, to thank her. Professors who had never spoken to her introduced themselves. Students who had ignored her for years told her she was amazing. One woman, an elderly donor with diamonds around her neck, pressed a business card into her hand and said she wanted to contribute to the scholarship fund. And then, cutting through the crowd, came the young man from the spring gala. He stopped in front of her. His eyes were red. His hands were shaking. For a long moment, he just stood there, unable to speak. I am sorry, he finally said. His voice was barely a whisper. I am so sorry for what I did. I was cruel and stupid, and I had no right. I understand if you hate me. I just needed you to know that I am sorry. Mira looked at him. She saw his shame. She saw his regret. And she remembered what her mother had always told her about forgiveness. Holding on to anger is like carrying a stone in your heart. It only hurts you. I do not hate you, Mira said gently. I forgive you, but I hope you remember this moment. I hope the next time you see someone you think is beneath you, you remember that you do not know their story. He nodded, tears spilling down his cheeks. Then he walked away, and Mira never saw him again. That night, after the crowds had gone and the hall had emptied, Mira stayed behind. Harold waited by the door, patient as always. She walked to the Steinway one last time. She sat down on the bench and placed her fingers on the keys. The moonlight streamed through the windows, just like it had on all those secret nights when she had taught herself to play again. Thank you, Mama, she whispered. Thank you for never giving up on me, even when I gave up on myself. Then she played, not for an audience, not for judges, not for prizes or applause, just one song, for her mom, and somewhere, in a place beyond time and distance and death, a mother smiled and listened to her daughter play, just like she always knew she would.